Local productions on QTV are made possible with support from viewers like you. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Junia Knows the Spark. I'm Junia Doan, and thank you for joining us. With me today is Philadelphia designer Alan Metcalfe, founder of Metcalfe Architecture and Design. He is also the designer of Whiting Forest Canopy Walk in Midland, Michigan. Welcome, Alan. I'm so glad you're here.
Oh, it's so great to be here. Junia.
Tell
Again.
me, again,
Yeah.
How did you get interested in design as a career?
Oh, well, that's kind of a funny family story because I was a college student and I had no clue what I was going to do. At the end of first year, I asked my guidance counselor, what do I do? And I said, I'm really interested in welding. And I was at a very fancy college. And he said, You're paying a lot of money to learn to weld. So at the end of that summer, I was talking to my wife, and she said, you know, my father and I were thinking, you would like to be an architect. And bells went off for me. It was amazing. And that was it. So I was 18, and I knew immediately that I wanted to do it. But it took me a long time to get to be a real architect. It was a long trip for me.
Because you started out in different schools?
Well, I went to a school that I went to Tufts, and they didn't have an architecture program, so I learned about architectural history. And then I said, I really want to learn how to build things, so I spent 13 years being a carpenter. Then I ended up at Columbia being an architecture student. And I continued to do construction in this town, which is crazy, doing construction in Manhattan, but I really liked it. So that was the beginning of it. But I think all that experience that I had in the beginning, doing construction and learning about people really helped me become the designer that I am today.
What did you learn about people?
Well, the thing that I learned about people was that they really like each other. They're really attracted to each other. And this is my secret sauce. This is what makes our office go, is that we're really trying to make places for people that are social spaces and play on their proclivities for being human. Like they love to play. They love to learn about the world because through experiencing it, through falling down, through pushing each other, through laughing, through playing with little items, turning them upside down and seeing them differently. And my example in my professional life was when I was an architecture student. I had a model that I was working on. It was a stadium, and I had a critic who was going, it's not that interesting, right? So I took that stadium model and I turned it upside down, and it was way better. And that's play. Play is not just handprints and playing games. Play is taking anything and looking at it in a different way. And when we do that, when we turn our minds off a little bit and just relax and run and fall down or turn things upside down or look at something in a different way, we're exploring the world. And that's what I learned about not being an architect, by working as a contractor, by learning about the history of architecture and the history of art. It's made me a much more interesting designer, not someone that just goes to the catalogs and goes to the magazines and copies.
So I think you can play across life. So to give a personal story, years and years ago, I was going to a formal dance and I put on my long dress and I said, I don't really like this. Let's try it back to front.
Yeah, right.
And back to front looked really good.
Right.
And when I went to the event, I was laughing inside because I got all these compliments.
Right.
And I thought, well, you can enjoy life at many levels, right? You know, the fun of just doing it differently, the risk of doing it differently, and, people's reaction to that. So the attitude is good. What did you learn as a carpenter about quality?
That people notice it without looking at details. They notice a general environment that is really beautifully crafted. And I learned that about design too, that you can't hammer people over the head, but if it's all beautifully done around you, it's a a very subtle and powerful message that your environment is really wants you to be there and you're very comfortable and happy. And as an example, like the public spaces in Manhattan, some of them are, the new ones are done really beautifully, really detailed beautifully. And then in my town of Philadelphia, with the same kinds of spaces, they don't spend the same amount of money. And when I go there, I sag a little bit. I don't feel as welcomed. And I
Which
think
impressed you in New York? Which spaces?
well, when I go down to the Battery, I
Yes.
love the Battery. I love the I grew, when I lived in New York, I lived on Riverside Drive, right? So at the time, this was in the very late 80s, the ribbon of the walkway hadn't been completed down to Battery City Park, and then little by little it became completed. And I saw an attitude of the way people change their minds about public spaces. And it's like that project you and I know each other from in Michigan. It's beautifully built, and it's beautifully built by the craftspeople of Midland, Michigan, and who have their own special story. But people feel great when they're in a beautifully constructed space. And my children went to a performing arts school in Philadelphia, and it was brand new, restored historic structure. And these are kids that came from all the different public schools in Philadelphia, and then they all came together at this performing arts high school, and you never saw so many happy kids. And I think part of it is because the building really respected them and made them feel welcome. If you live in a shabby environment, you act and feel disrespected.
That's the 1940s architect, right? We change the environment, we improve people's actions.
It's really true. And I think, like in Times Square, Snoetta redesigned Times Square, and it's fabulous. And they do all these things to manipulate the space. That's really exciting and subtle. People also don't want to feel like someone's bossing them around. So it's a little bit of like engineering psychology. Like we take spaces in my practice and we suggest arrangements for furniture, and then we look at them and see how they use them. We're doing a library, Lovett Library for the city. And the outdoor space is really powerful, partly because we're creating places for people, and then we move the furniture around, let them move it, and then take notes, and then try another way of doing it. And it's amazing. If that furniture, and they know this from New York City, if that furniture is nailed down, people get angry because they can't change their environment. They don't want to feel like some architect is bossing them around. They want to feel that they have their own purview, they have their own way of changing it and making it their own. So I learned a lot about that in art history and construction and being a father too.
And they feel trusted too.
They do, like a contributor, right?
Yes.
Right, and honored.
I always think I try to be the artist of my own life.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And it goes right down to the furniture, as you're saying.
Right.
Do I have say over where I'm going to sit? Say something of the project you did in Midland, the Canopy Walk.
Well, that is my dream project for our office. So far, it's the most, and sorry to my other clients who may be watching this, but it really is a confluence of so many things that we think about in our office, of experience. We're experienced designers, really, now. So we do create social spaces and informal learning spaces for schools, museums, and public spaces of hospitals, and then a lot of other cultural organizations like Whiting Forest, which is part of Dow Gardens.
Right.
And that project is, first we help them reshape their, kind of like their mission, help them work and collaborate with them, which we love to do. When we have a really smart client, like Whiting Forest and Dow Gardens, like they came to us with a lot, and we say to them, okay, if you'll do the work with us, you're going to have a great project. So we help them relocate their visitor center into a place that is so obvious to me when I walked on campus, which is the existing visitor center was a not very exciting building.
Yes.
We relocated it into the Whiting House, done by Alden Dow, which is a fabulous mid-century modern building and is at the heart of the campus, brings people all the way in. Then we create into the center as opposed to letting them stay on the edge. And then we connected them to the Dow Gardens, which was part of our brief. Connect it, make everybody feel going from the gardens that you go to Whiting Forest and come into a little bit of excitement and the risk of the outdoors, because Dow Gardens is a very manicured place.
Yes, it
and by intent, and it's spectacular. But people also want to feel like they're in the way, a little bit of the outdoors. And my office wants to make people feel excited by being in the outdoors. And this is my hobby horse, is like kids doing this with
Right.
digital media. Fine, I do it.
Right.
But I want kids to experience life and play and grow up. This is hard to grow up intellectually, you may, but not experientially and physically. So we created this huge canopy walk for them.
So, how did you not figure out, what did you want to include that turned out to be the overlook that moves, or the glass platform,
you
that you
got
could do the pipes that make noise and things
Right.
like that? How did those come about, those ideas?
Well, we know that we call it perceived risk. This is a term of art in play studies and play. When people feel like they're being challenged, like kicking a soccer ball, or turning that model upside down, or pushing their friend and playing a game, or hitting each other, or hugging each other, or something, or doing something that's different, in a different way of experiencing things, they want to come back. So in the garden, we have the canopy walk that you're referring to. 3 long arms, the longest canopy walk. Elevated in the woods, in the forest. 3 long arms extending out into different parts of the forest. And at the end of each is a unique experience. And during the walkways, there's unique experiences. But the one that gets everybody that you're referring to is the arm that's 40 feet above the orchards, and it's a glass floor. And so people are scared, and they challenge each other, and they come back and they jump up and down on it. And when you jump up and down on it, the orange rods start to make noise and hammer each other, and they're terrified, and they come back over and over and over again. And then they're with their friends who are too scared to go, and they get them to come out. And the main thing is it's super safe.
Well, tell me how you got to those ideas for those spaces.
I remember what it's like to be a kid. That's really what I do, and that's my secret way of, it's not really secret, but it's something I invite adults to do. It's just like, what did it feel like to be a kid? What excited you? And to me, being high up, and I built tree houses, right, when I was a kid, to be high up in the trees was really exciting for me. And to have those trees move terrified me and made me go back over and over again.
Yeah.
And in the context of Mike Whiting, who was board head, he had that same experience in a tree. So it became a story that wound itself through the forest. So we have netting. We have a tree house netting over in a grove of pine trees. Yeah. We have the tree house, or the little house, over the pond. Yes. And then we have the other over the orchard, right? Yeah. And there are 3 different experiences that feel different. And they also encourage people to gather together. And I know that playing is more fun on a team. That's why we have soccer teams. We don't just play by ourselves. That's why we play in bands.
So you've done sort of spaces in hospitals for children. Right. If you were going to apply that to the adult wings, what would you do that would be playful?
Well, let's say, I think the thing we would do would be create places for people to talk first, because there's a lot of anxiety. Yes. About going to hospitals. And to explain the children's hospitals that we do now, we create family spaces, and I would do the same for adults. And we create places that have games and have physical distractions, and actually make kids 2 parents have told me their kids wanted to come back to the hospital after they visited.
That's a compliment.
Which I wish I knew who those kids were, right? Yeah. Because I'd love to talk to them more about it. Yes. But so I'd want something that got the parents, the adults, to want to come back and with their families. So I think, okay, it's obvious is digital hookups and stuff, but I think it's more like large-scale games that are interactive between adults. And so a secret that I learned is also physical. When one visitor to our netting, say in Morris Arboretum, the University of Pennsylvania project that we did, the other tree canopy walk, what I found out from that is when kids or adults actually touched each other and had to speak to each other, all these social compacts broke down, right? So people would start to talk to each other. They'd say sorry, right?
Yeah.
Once you break that, everybody wants to talk to each other. And so I would create that environment somehow. And we haven't done these yet. We're gunning to do an adult hospital because it would be a real challenge to make adults play a little bit in a public space where they're a little stressed out. But I think the stress of it also may help them be distracted a little bit.
So I like swings, three-seater
Right.
swings that I can lie down and read on. And I always find movement very calming.
Right.
It's like a metronome.
Right, just like those rockers in airports. People
Yes.
love those.
Yes.
They love them. And when people first saw them, I'm sure they're like, what?
Yes.
Then you see one person doing it, and you don't need an instruction manual. This is
Right.
what I love about play.
Intuitive
Yes, a hill.
and exploratory.
Yeah, exploratory. And a hill needs no rule book. And one person sees someone using it, and another person goes over there. So seesaws, like in Berlin, one of my favorite exhibits is seesaws that are 40 feet long in the center of the city.
Yeah.
But in a hospital, it's a little tough to do that because they have a lot of
Space.
restrictive rules. No,
Yes.
they're very
Let's
careful.
not injure our visitors.
Right, and I respect that. But learning to work in a healthcare environment has been really challenging because we want to,
Materials. Right. Lighten it up.
do a lot of things that are physically challenging, and you can't really do that. You have to respect them and respect your client and your end user. Like, you don't want to make it worse. You want to make it
So
better.
do you try to weave fun into all your projects? Mm-hmm. What's an example of another that you're particularly fond of?
Well, let's see. We talked about hospitals. So I say fun. I'd say play is a better
Play.
word than fun. And this is really I was going to say funny, a difficult thing to explain to the world, because when people hear play, they think about handprints. And you're an artist, right? So you know it's not handprints and goofy things that are bright crayon colors. Like play, as an aside, kids are very sophisticated. Adults are very sophisticated about color and about the items of play. So other projects that we're working on that are playful is like, for instance, a charter school that we did. You might not think this is playful, but they have a mission about being environmental stewards, taking care of the earth that takes care of us, the Wissahickon Charter. So that mission there was reflected in our public space that we had for them. When you enter, you see a triple height space that's stairs circling around and huge pine trees in the back. And this is playful because it reminds you of where you are and that the school is about trees. And everybody enters there every day. The principal is there, and he greets everybody. So I would say that's playful because it reminds you happily of where you are and creates an environment that asserts the mission of the organization.
So you've done a few houses.
Yeah.
How would you work with a client, or what are they coming to you for,
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to another architect?
Well, I would say that they'd have to like my aesthetic, which is pretty contemporary, but it's really warm. And they would come to us because I really think about a trip through a building. And we did the Spence House in Cornwall, Connecticut. And we were surrounded by lots of Heisman project and a Boland-Swinsky project. And so I was in great company, and I was
Yes.
careful. I wanted to do something really cool. So we thought about the trip from the garage to the house. And that trip became, because the front doors are, everybody arrives by car except in Manhattan and
Right.
urban conditions, which I love. But there's a story in it. And so they would come to us because we create a narrative about coming into a building. So it's not just a series of spaces. It's you come to the garage, you get out of your car, you pass a garden that's so intimate and compressed, you want to stop and look at it, and then you walk up these small stairs, and this vista unrolls itself in front of you. And the story is from this little compressed space, we open up to a hint of the garden, to the view beyond, to this huge forest. So when you work with us, you get a series of spaces that are really modulated and metered, but also let you go off the path to the garden, hang out in the garden, see your friend there. We create a series of social spaces that make people happy.
But when you drive into their property, do you see the garage, or is it hidden or
You see it,
turned?
but you don't see the rest. And that's, to me, examples in a house of play are when you walk in a door, you might see a screen and you see little hints behind it of what's coming. And these are very traditional design motifs. They're actually this is Chinese, where you don't want to have a straight shot through. You want to have a screen. You see a hint and you go around, because like it's a dance, and you want a little window that, long hallway that you see a particular view every day. That's what I love. I love something that you can look forward to, even in your house, when you've been there 1,000 times, 2,000 times, but there's a little part in the back of your brain which says, oh, I got to look out that window. I got to see what's there. That's what I want. And so that's me being engineering an experience, but they don't know that I was thinking that, and they don't have to look out the window. That's the important thing, is it's all optional, and it's because you're curious and you want to.
So to personalize in my home, when I walked into the front hall, which is big, I always have a sense of reverence that I'm walking into a chapel. And in other parts, I have other feelings, the living room or this or that.
Right.
And I always wondered, is it in my mind? Is it the light? Is it the color? I can't have the same experience over and over and over again, because I've lived there a long time, but I do.
Yeah.
And I don't understand why, because in often things, when people see things regularly, they don't really,
They forget.
it all smooths out some way.
Well, you have beautiful light in this apartment, and you have a very neutral palette, which is one way of approaching it, and really is gentle and makes me feel calm. Like for this interview, I walked in and went, like
That is a compliment, Alan.
Well, it's true, and you're doing this here in this beautiful space, and it's
Right.
very calming. And I think tons about light, like to have two walls of windows is really powerful. I think about this all the time. And I think about the way you see space. I think about eyes and painting. Like if you walk into a room where there's just one window, it's a great view, but the light's all coming from one direction, it'll look really dark in the rest of the apartment. And that is because it's only one window and it's making your eye dilate, right?
It would contract.
Contract.
No. It'd have to open because it's not lit enough.
Yeah,
Is
but
that
you're
your point?
squinting, you're looking at the light, and then that makes everything else dark. Okay,
Yes.
if you have two walls of windows, it's very evenly lit.
You
it's
mean
very
that are
calm.
perpendicular or round
Yes,
or something?
that's right. So
Is that
I think
why I
about
like this, because there's windows here and windows there?
Yeah, and this is the thing. I love understanding why people like space. And so when I did this project at Lovett Library, we did, it's for the Knight Foundation, and they tour all over the United States and give money for public space. So we created these social spaces outside this newly renovated building. And I gave a tour to all these people. And I said, I see this, I see that, I see this sense of entry, I see social space here. And they all went, wow, like where do you get that stuff? And this is what I think about. It's just fun because I know about people and I know about distances. Like I can just feel it. I can think about it. And I think about play, and I just think about the way people relate to each other. And that's really what it starts with, is thinking about how people interact. And what are they, like we're having this conversation and there's a distance between us. We're on being filmed, so this distance is
I feel comfortable.
yeah.
Don't you?
Yes, I do.
Yeah.
But because it's on a couch, couches are set up for a certain social distance. And then when you're in a stadium by yourself, say you walked out into a football stadium and you had nobody with you, you'd feel so lonely. But when you had 10,000 people with you and you were bunched up next to each other, you'd feel really great, like this is designed for this sort of space. So I design spaces that are set up for the number of people and the kind of people.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it's really, like I did a TEDx talk about what we have in common with herd animals and with bugs, the way we occupy space. And people don't like to think about themselves as animals, but I think it really helps me understand human behavior to think that we're not all intellect at all.
Do people have the same visual acumen, or this is really bodily acumen? Or there are differences. If something's a quarter of an inch or an eighth of an inch off, I get uncomfortable. Like in a painting, this is
Right.
not. Other people walk in, they don't even see the painting.
People are really different. People are, and
so
also,
does this apply? That's basically what I'm asking. Does it apply to this, or does it apply more widely?
well, I think
The
that
herd part.
the herd part is very widely applied. And my example is, why do people all gather in a kitchen, right? They gather because it's small. At a party, they gather at a party. Like, your living room could be empty, your kitchen. Why is everybody in here? There's food, and it's intimate, and it's noisy, right? And when you're at a party, you don't know that many people, maybe. So you want to be where everybody's really comfortable, right? So you go in there, and apes are famous for, and they're our close animal relatives. They're famous for taking when the herd of apes, I don't know what the group is called,
Right.
a pride of apes or whatever
Yeah.
they're called, gets meat, when they have a party. And when they have that party, the senior leader apes and the most junior apes become equals. And that's the same thing as the way when we have a dinner party. If you break bread with someone, you're able
equal?
to, you're an
Are
equal.
you?
Yes.
So we've learned a lot, and I've got to talk really fast here. First of all, it helps to have a sensitive eye. Secondly, it helps to be a seeker and a risk taker, and finally a discoverer of play, discoverer of quality, the discoverer that human sense and wish connection, and the desire to provide that to a world that likes, rigidity somewhat. There's a lot to say about his building experience. Quality isn't popular these days, but we need to go back to that because, as he said, it's restful, it's integrating, and even if you don't know why, you will feel it. So anyway, I want to thank him for being here and uplifting all of us. Remember, uplift your life, go out and do something kind for someone you know and someone you don't know. And tune in next time. I want to see you there. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you,
Junia.
Alan.
To contact Junia, send her an email at juniadownsthespark@gmail.com. For more information, program schedules, and news about future guests, go to www.juniadownthespark.com. Thank you for joining us. See you next time on Junia Doan's The Spark.
Local productions on QTV are made possible with support from viewers like you. Thank you.